So I've started this video by just drawing out some squares of equal size, and I'm just now adding some masking tape just to one edge of what is effectively the window where the little cat is peeking out of. I'm now just taking up some of the brown paint on my brush and just drawing freehand very simple shape of the cat. So we've got our two little ears, our little cheeks, and then I'm also just putting in just the shape, the silhouette of the body of the cat. Now I've masked up one side of the window, but I haven't at the bottom, so I'm just being very careful not to get the paint over the pencil line of our little window. So I'm just working with a solid colour, just a very light brown. And at the moment I'm just working with wet on dry. Just paying a particular attention to where the paint is pooling, so I'm just being quite mindful as to where that paint is actually sitting. So now we go on to our next little cat, and this one I'm just again putting a little bit of masking tape at the base of the window because he's just going to be peeking out over the top. So I'm just doing this little cat in a dark grey, again by freehand, very simple in shape. Just putting his two little ears and then his cheeks. And again working wet on dry and just being mindful as to the way that paint actually moves on the paper. You can really have some fun with this little design. You can add in some extra details on the window itself. You don't just have to draw the black outline. You could add some little curtains. You could maybe add some little ornaments around the window. It's just something a little bit different, a little bit of fun. So again, I've just grabbed some more masking tape for our next little cat. And this little chap is upside down and he's hanging out of the window. So I've just marked off what effectively is the top of the window, and then we'll just paint this little chap upside down. Doing him in a like a burnt sienna colour, so he's a little bit of a ginger cat. Again, just being very careful that the paint doesn't go over the pencil line of the window. I've got a little bit of pool in there at the bottom of his ear, so I've just dried my brush off and I'm just using a dry bit of paper towel just to clear up the excess of that paint. And now we're on our last little cat. So this one is peeking out from the bottom. So again, just using the masking tape, I've just put a bit of tape across the bottom. And this one's going to be a little black cat. So just working that paint around the outline of the cat. Again, working wet on dry at the moment. Now I wanted to add some extra details and a bit of depth of colour to these little cats. So this is where we can work wet on wet. So I've just used a different shade of brown and some water on my brush, and I'm just then allowing that paint to bloom and just move around the colour at the back of the cat. If you get too much water as you're working this paint, just then dry it off, dry your brush off on the paper towel, and just then just take some of that paint back. And you'll notice you'll then get a lovely sort of shading and colour to your little cats. So on this one, I've just put in like a petrol bluey colour on the grey cat. And again, working wet on wet and quite watered down paint. Just allow that to run over the top of the grey. So a thirsty brush will take up any of the excess pooling. So just keep your kitchen paper to hand, and then you just be able to dry that paintbrush off. Now for the one that's upside down, I've used a darker brown, and again wet on wet, and I'm just pushing that paint just to the outside edge, just to create that little sort of mottled tabby like effect of this little cat. And then for the black one at the bottom, I've just put in a little bit of brown as well. Now you can take some time and sort of have a bit of an experiment really of these different sort of colours and how the paint responds when working wet on wet. So I'm just adding some brown into the little grey cat at the moment. And just be gentle with it, don't be too heavy-handed as you're applying the paint. And just be mindful as to where that paint is running and where it's pooling. And you can always take it back using a drier brush. Now I've just used a bit of kitchen paper on this little cat that's upside down because I just don't want the paint that had pooled at the top to seep underneath the tape, so I was just being quite mindful that it wouldn't be leaking underneath that masking tape and spoiling the lines of the painting. So So just take some time working with the paint and the water, and be mindful when you're drying the brush off how that paint then moves and responds. So as you can see, that paint hasn't bled. So carefully remove the masking tape once you've finished painting your little cats. And then we need to allow that to dry. So I'm just using my black fine liner pen and just putting in the details and character of these little cats. So I'm starting with the black cat. Just going around the outline of the shape of the cat. And I'm just going to put in some whiskers. So we're looking at the back of his head, but we can see his whiskers. So for our little ginger cat here, I'm just putting in the shape of his ears and his eyes, his little nose, and then adding in his cheeks and his whiskers. Now you can really have some fun with these little quirky cats, because you can give them little collars, you can dress them up if you wanted to, you could give them little crowns. They're quite fun to paint. So we'll just put in some details of our little mischievous cat here that's upside down. With his nose. And then we're just going to put some of his whiskers in. I'm just using a ruler just to give me that sort of end stop really as I'm putting in the whiskers, because I don't want them to go over the pencil mark. And then we'll just put in the details of our little grey cat. I'll put him in some eyes and his nose. And a nice smiley face. Just pop in his whiskers. And then I'm just changing my pen now to a Sharpie, and it's always nice to do the outline of these little windows freehand, just go over the pencil line with your Sharpie pen. Doesn't matter if it wobbles, if your line wobbles, that's fine. It looks better that it's a little bit wavy and a bit wobbly compared to a straight line off a ruler. So just very carefully take the masking tape off that's been holding the painting down. And then just continue just to do the outlines of the little windows. So once that's all finished, you can then remove the masking tape. And if you're happy with your work, you can sign it. So I'm just going to sign this piece of work off as I always do, with I paint in a little heart. And then I just need to sign it off. So I've just got my pen and I'll just sign it off with the Quirky Bird. Thank you for watching. Have some fun. And don't forget about our little quirky dog video too. Goodbye.